Well, it's that time again. It's time for the Hybrid Disciple. Actually, I say that time again. We've done this once before. So can it really be like a tradition yet if we've only done it once, Miss Ashley? I don't actually know. You live in the Phoenix area, and I guess my biggest question for you before we get anything going is, how hot does it actually get in Phoenix? Like, I've heard all of the you can cook an egg on the blacktop thing, but is it actually that?
Yes. You can actually bake cookies in your car. I've done it with my children. You
That's
can
ridiculous.
actually cook eggs. You cannot walk your dogs unless they have booties on their feet, or you do it at night because the asphalt and the concrete gets so hot that it'll burn their paws. Summertime, I say that you've lived in Phoenix a long time when you start saying things like it's only 116 today. Like, you're like, it's not bad out here. It's like it's only 115. Like, it's hot.
Dry heat?
It's kind of like, I liken it to a convection oven, those ones that blow hot air. And when you open it, there's just like this wave of like super hot air that just slams you in the face. That's Phoenix from like July, August, September. It's hot. So we're in this it's the first week of May right now. Today, I think the high is like 104. So it's a nice day. It's like a nice cool day.
That's like you might as well go ice skating in that. In Florida here, the high was only 85, but our hot is like very
Clammy.
like oppressively humid. Yeah, I don't know if you guys get the humidity out there, but we just get like a wet blanket over us all the time.
Yeah, no, it's in the monsoon, so the end of August, we get rain every afternoon, like these big mega storms. And that's pretty miserable because the rain is cold, oddly. So it'll cool things down. But then in the next morning, so it's like the storm's rolling around 3 in the afternoon. It rains like crazy, usually till 2 or so in the morning. And then the morning, the sun comes up and it's 115 the first half of the day. Plus, it just rained an inch and a half. So then it's like sweltering. But the rest of the time, But I do tell people, you've just got to pick your winter. So like we're going into our winter, meaning the time of year, like you don't go outside, you run from your house to the car, you pre-start your car so the AC comes on. It's like everything people do in Chicago, just in July.
Yeah, 6 months later, 7 months later.
So this is winter for us. I've had people, I avoid the sun like a vampire because I'm so white. But people will be like, I just figured you'd be tan because you live in Phoenix. I'm like, nobody from Phoenix goes outside in the summer. Like, why would we do that? Like, it's just such a foreign, now we will swim on Thanksgiving whenever it's 85 and everyone else is miserable. But
we've got that too here. That's great.
But summer's hot.
Congrats on making it through that. We'll be talking more in depth as we get into June and July as we're running this podcast as well. We are in, like I said, episode 1 of the Hybrid Disciple. Last episode was really sort of an intro as to who I am. I'm Andy, and who that is over there, and that's Ashley. We really have a heart and a vision for diving into what it looks like to actually be a disciple, not only physically, but digitally as well. And Ashley is very savvy and very good, not only with marketing. She's the one that did all of our logo work and all of our color and branding work, and it's just chef's kiss. But she's also very, very good with online and really social media discipleship, if we want to call it that. So I guess we need to define terms first as we go forward in this entire podcast. First off, in your head, you have that Christian buzzword, disciple, and it means something mysterious. Ooh, I'm following Jesus. But what is a disciple to you?
A disciple to me is a relationship between somebody who is stronger in the faith and older in the faith with somebody who is either new or just at a different stage of their spiritual growth. And the relationship between the two of them where the older, stronger one is essentially guiding and teaching the younger one. I think really discipleship is just the spiritual version of mentorship. I think we get real caught up on the fanciness of the word disciple, but really it's just a mentor. It's a spiritual mentor. It's a spiritual mother, spiritual father, spiritual big brother, spiritual big sister who, come alongside you and helps you as you're processing through things that maybe they've already been through, and they can speak wisdom into that area of your life, who is dedicated to being discipled themselves. So I have a lot of really, really savvy business people that I have the privilege of working with. And, one of the things that they say all of the time is whenever you're in business, you do not want to be the most seasoned person at a business meeting because you do not have anyone that's capable of helping you grow. You are like at the top. So you want to consistently put yourself in scenarios where you have people who are better than you at what you're doing to constantly challenge you and to grow and to become better. And discipleship for me is very much that way. I think that as we go through life, I've been a believer and an active Christ follower for 9.5 or so years, but I grew up in church, so I had that knowledge of the word to fall back on whenever I gave my life to Jesus when I was 34 years old. But now I would say that I have a really solid understanding of the gospel. I have a really solid understanding of the scripture. I've been a believer for a long time. I was raised in that. But I have not arrived by any stretch of the imagination. And so it's important to me that I find women who are actively in their own pursuit of God, who are older than me, not necessarily in age, but in faith and experience, or in just experience in general, like people who have walked through areas that I want to be successful at. So for instance, an area of discipleship for me might be healthy relationships in marriage. I have failed at marriage 3 times. Clearly I'm bad at it or something and so it would be foolish for me to approach a new relationship or a new marriage without having a woman of faith who has had a very successful marriage, who loves God, who was discipling me in that area, who was coming alongside of me and saying, you might want to try this, or this is what the Bible says about that, or this is what genuine, and I'm going to say a word that freaks people out, female submission to her husband, what that looks like. And this is how you do that. And this is what it is. This is what it isn't. And that's what discipleship is to me. It's really just being smart enough to know that you don't know everything and that you need somebody who is more seasoned, who comes alongside and pours into you, but also being discipled and the willingness to be discipled is a very humbling thing, and you have to allow yourself to be open to accountability. And then you also, if you're discipling someone, have to be willing to hold people accountable, right? Because holding people accountable is not fun most of the time.
What do you mean? You don't like having those conversations? Like, hey, maybe we need to talk. You don't like having those?
I'm pretty good at those conversations, but there's that moment, where you're talking to someone and you can see the path of destruction that they are headed down very clearly. And you're like, okay, this is probably not the best path, and this is why. And then they go down that path anyway. And then being willing to step into the pit that you told them not to dive into, and like pulling them back out of the pit and walking with them as they clean themselves up. And, you're like cleaning scraped knees and bandaging bruises and walking along with them and hoping that they don't turn around and try to go back into the pit again. And so it's a dedication, Yeah, but I think that's what a disciple is to me. I think it's relationship. It's a relationship that's so close to someone that all of their dirt. Their dirt is absolutely going to get on you because you're going to have to climb into spaces that you probably climbed out of years ago, that you now have wisdom and knowledge on how to get out, and being willing to do that. And that's what discipleship is, I'd say.
So a couple of weeks ago, we were talking kind of about the first number of episodes that we were going to be recording, and you had made a statement. We were rapping a little bit about discipleship, and the hybrid portion of what we're talking about came in, where we were talking about social media and influencers and digital and all that, and then we started kind of diving into the physical. And you made a comment that you said, we don't actually know what discipling looks like because of megachurch culture. And I want you to unpack that just a little bit, because A, I find that fascinating, and B, like, I agree with you, and also I think people need to hear your rationale behind that. So unpack that for me if you don't mind.
Yeah. This is one of those like uncomfortable things because I'm sure I'm going to step on some toes, and that's okay.
Let's go. Let's step.
I don't think that God's intention for the church was ever mega church. And this is not a slam against the heart behind what I know some mega church pastors have created, because I genuinely believe that their heart is for people, and they've been given a platform and a level of influence to speak into the lives of a lot of people at once. Sometimes tens of thousands of people at once. And that is a beautiful thing. But I liken mega churches to the Sermon on the Mount versus Jesus chilling with his disciples. Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount is speaking to thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And they are hearing the message, but there's really no way for Jesus and the disciples to know whether or not that message was really processed through properly, essentially. Like, did they really take it the way that it was intended? Did they really digest it from a biblical perspective? And how are they applying it to their life? And once they are attempting to apply it to their life, if they're struggling and they're slipping, there's no way for us to know that in a mega church, right? Because you can essentially go in and out of these big churches and never see the same person twice at a close range. Like, of course, you're going to see the worship team twice. You're going to see the pastor twice. Mm-hmm. But the only reason you're seeing them is because they're on stage.
Right.
It's not because you walk in and, the pastor comes up to you and is like, hey, Ashley, I know that you came forward last week and we're praying about this. How's that going? That was never, that's not something that's possible in that environment. Excuse me. And I just don't think that that's a biblical model. Now, I know that megachurch is one of the things that they often do is they create small groups and invite people into a closer level of discipleship where, a small group may have 10 to 12 to 15 people. But I went to a small group from a megachurch here in the Phoenix area when I moved back to Phoenix, and I walked in there and I don't remember, there was like 40 people in that small group.
That's not a small group.
And
that's
I was like, this is like the same size of the church that I grew up in, because I grew up in a small town.
Yeah.
So even in a pure attempt to have a small group to lead to greater levels of discipleship, it was so big that I went probably 4 times before anyone in the small group actually directly reached out to me to be like, hey, I noticed that you're in small group. How's it going? Like, what compelled you to want to come to small group and to build relationship in that space? And so I don't think it's possible. Not that it's not possible. I think it's just very difficult for people to be properly discipled in megachurches. Now, I think megachurches are amazing evangelist tools because they have the budgets to get people into the doors. They are able to get the message out there in a really big way. I think that they're great for teaching, which if I'm wanting to just learn, like, hey, I really just want to be fed today and I want to go and I want to sit and I want to hear some powerhouse teaching where the pastor's really breaking down sermons and are really breaking down passages of scripture and feeding me, just like on the Sermon on the Mount. Like, obviously the Beatitudes like are a major component of our Christian walk. So, you can walk away with really, really great information and things that you can apply to your life. But this day in, day out discipleship, I think, has to be done on a much smaller level. I think it has to be much more personal. I think that you need to actually be able to call the person that you're discipling. You need to be able to communicate with them consistently enough that you actually know what is going on in their lives. Because the disciples of Christ were with him all the time. He ate with them. He traveled with them. He rested his head with them. He, did work with them. And I think that if we're looking at a model of what discipleship is, we have to look at Jesus, obviously. And what did his dynamic with the disciples look like? And then to even further it, he had the 12, and then he had the inner circle, which Peter, James, and John, that were like his super close disciples, the ones that he really, really spent a ton of really personal time with. And I think if you're wanting to disciple people or be discipled, you have to have those levels. So you have the inner circle of people that I know for a fact that I am able to come alongside this person, and because of my life experiences and because of the things that they are going through and what they want to grow through, I'm able to bring them very, very close to me and pour directly into them on a day-to-day, sometimes hour by hour basis. And then you have the broader circle, which is similar, but it's just maybe not like all day, every day. So a great example for me is one of my very close friends. Her name is Becca. Hi, Becca. She'll, I'm sure, listen to this. Yeah.
Hi, Becca.
Becca is 36, single mom like me, and she was trafficked whenever she was younger for 3 years. And Christ follower, she's getting her master's degree in clinical counseling, which I'm super proud of her. And I would say that our relationship is very much a big sister, little sister relationship. Because there are areas of her life that I have already lived through, that I have healed through. And I talk to that girl all day long, every single day. And she is one of my closest friends, but there's definitely a discipleship dynamic in that space. It's very much, hey, you're acting funky, like what's going on? Like I can tell by the way that you're texting me that something is not going okay with you, so we need to talk about it. And then when we talk about it, I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling this, or this triggered me and I'm really struggling with thoughts of that. I'm able to come alongside of her and say, well, what about this scenario triggered you? Like what is still a spiritual pain point for you that we're able, so that we can process through that and then rewire what's going on in your brain with the truth of the scripture. And then sometimes, let's be real, Andy, sometimes people just need you to sit there and listen to them and cry with them and feel with them and not try to fix anything. And I think that that's equally discipleship. But if you're not close to them, you don't know how to do that. You don't even know that they need that. And that's the major difference between megachurch and like a discipleship culture in a space, is that closeness and personal knowledge of a person to be able to really speak into whatever it is that they're facing.
So then how the heck do you do that in social media? Like as an influencer, which you are, how the heck do you do that with other people? Because like that, I'm a digital pastor, right? I have done the physical church, mega church thing. I've been in a mega church for about the last 4 years. Before that, I was in just an average size, 500 person church for about 10 or 15 years over the span of a couple of churches. And, we can talk about discipleship all day and how, being up there and teaching on a Sunday morning is not discipleship, yada, yada, yada. Like that's 1,000,000% true. That's why a lot of churches need spiritual formation directors. That's why they need, some sort of component there that leads to smaller groups and then even smaller discipleship bands or groups or whatever the heck you want to call it. So that's the physical side. But like the digital side, I think is the thing that a lot of people wrestle with. So in your head, like, what does that actually look like?
Yeah, it's not a whole lot different fundamentally. I think one major thing that people have to wrap their mind around is that it's actually on some level easier to disciple someone on the internet. And the reason is because if I'm so this is basically the process for me. I have 35,000 followers on TikTok, 10 to 12,000, I don't know, on IG. And those are two very different people groups. Let me just be clear. The IG people,
very different.
the IG people are like moms and like women who work in business and that group. My TikTok crew is a motley crew. Like they're like, some of them are really strong believers, some of them are strippers, some of them are hookers, some of them are addicts, some of them are former all of those things. Some of those are former some of those things, but still dabble in other things. Like my TikTok people, they're like no limit soldiers, and I adore them. But they're like, they're a whole thing. So first, I think from a discipleship perspective, just like in person, you got to know your audience. Like, who are you talking to? And you have to make sure that the things that you're putting out are streamlined to the people that are listening to you. So the basic posts that I put out are much more not to compare myself to Jesus before somebody goes crazy in the comments. It's much more Sermon on the Mount. It's like a wide message, like, hey, let's break down the story of Jonah, or hey, let's break down the story of Rahab, or this is, I posted a thing the other day about power washing being likened to like studying your Bible, like that's a much broader thing that could resonate with whoever really. But then you have the people that through day in, day out interaction, I know who watches my content every single day. I know who comments. I know who that inner circle of people are. And I am very intentional. I don't have it down here. I'd even show you guys. I have a notebook literally that I write down people's handles. Like, and when I start noticing that they're consistently coming to my page and they're consistently consuming my content, I literally write at, Andy Mage, at whoever. I write their handles down, and then I just start watching for those handles. Then part of online discipleship is going to their channel and engaging with their stuff, because this has to be a back and forth relationship. It can't just be me talking all of the time. It has to be me going into their space and seeing, okay, she commented on my thing that this post on allowing God to take the shame from your past because of what I talked about with Rahab, she talked about really needing that. And so now I'm going to go on her page and see, what is it that she's putting out? Is she talking about shame? Is she kind of downplaying her own, like, humanity? Like, what is she putting out there? And then it requires me to comment on her stuff, which sounds so simple, but you have to do the work. And so, you start paying attention to the people that are engaging with you. You start really getting to know them first through their content. Like, and I say it's almost easier because there's this idea online that you can post stuff and you say stuff online. People say the craziest things on the internet that it would take them months to tell you in person. Months. But then you go on TikTok and somebody's, posted a twerking video, and then you're like, after you built a relationship with them, like, girl, you said that you didn't want to be part of this lifestyle anymore. Like, what's hurting in you today that made you feel like you needed the validation from the masses? Because you and I have been talking for the last several weeks that this is something that you're wanting to grow through. So what's hurting? Like, what's happening in there that's making you want to respond this way? And that's like done in DMs. But there has to be a system. Like, you really need a system for discipleship. And you have to understand the difference between your Sermon on the Mount content, your inner 12 content, and then your super close people. And you can have those levels whenever you're discipling online. you can almost have more people, I would say, that you're discipling one-on-one, because I assign days to certain tags. So it's like Monday, I'm going to spend an hour checking on these 15 people. Tuesday, I'm going to spend checking on these 15 people. Wednesday, these 15 people. And so by the end of the week, I've actively communicated with 100, 120 people, checked in, make sure they're good, send them DMs, ask about their kids. And then as they grow, my hope, and something that I'm working on right now with 12 that I've got to I'm really just kind of processing through, is okay, I want to get to a point where I have people like Becca, who right now she lives in Portland. If I'm consistently discipling a girl that lives in Portland, I know that I have a woman who loves Jesus, who understands the word, who wants to disciple others. And I can say, hey, Becca, meet Susie. She lives in Portland too. Can you meet up with her in Portland? Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So that way you are moving people from the online space to the in-person space, which is really what hybrid disciple, what we're even talking about, like what the point is. Like, we have this disillusionment that we have to keep people in the digital space. The goal is to really create a network of people. I think this should be the goal, where I know right now, if there's a woman who I've been discipling for a while that really needs to get plugged into a church in Tampa, well, then I'm going to call you and be like, hey, Andy, she's amazing. I love this girl. These are some of the things that she's grown through. Do you know a woman who you trust, that is just a powerhouse, that I can introduce her to through Instagram so that they can connect and set up coffee? But that requires us as a church, as the body of Christ, to first off bust down this territorialism mindset. Susie in Portland is not my person. She's God's person. He brought me into her life through the digital space to build a relationship with her and let her know that, hey, these things that you're going through, let's work through those. But I know that there's a limit to what I can do with Susie in Portland. So I've got to not be territorial and release her to someone in Portland who can actually physically be there and continue the discipleship in person. It doesn't mean that once I give her information to Becca that I just dip. It just means that I'm transferring some of the discipleship responsibility to a person who's able to tangibly be there with them. And so I think that's people have to understand, to disciple well online requires significant intentionality. It cannot be just playing on the internet. It's not just going on and posting. It's really paying attention to, this is what this person is struggling with. This is what this person, and you've got to take notes. Next time I'll bring my notebook down here. I literally take notes. And if you want to disciple people well online, you've got to pay attention. It has to be something that you set time every single day aside to do. And I've told you before, Andy, we're all influencers. If you have a platform and you have people that follow you, you are influencing those people, which means whether you have tens of thousands of followers or you have 100 followers, you are influencing those people. And that means that you have the ability and the opportunity to disciple people from your page. But there has to be intentionality behind it. And I would say the second thing is, if you're going to take on the role of discipling people on the internet, you've got to not be a crazy cuckoo, you're going to die, God hates you. This sin does not disciple
Please
people.
do that. That's so much fun, let me tell you, watching people's heads just freak out.
Discipleship is not about, especially online, you will actually kill any work that you're doing if you try to overtly push a point onto someone else if they are not ready to receive it. Because something that I say all the time is accountability without relationship is judgment.
Yeah. Oh, goodness gracious. Yes.
If I don't have a relationship with you and you have not invited me into an accountability space with you, whatever I bring forth to you to try to guide you or correct you or disciple you is going to come across as judgment, because you do not know me. You don't know the history. You don't know what I went through today. You don't know all of the things that have led up to my interpretation of the scripture in that way. And one of the consistent things that I see that Christians are doing that are essentially squashing our witness online is attempting to bring accountability without relationship. And we are over and over and over pegged as these hyper judgmental people because we have decided that we are able to make a snap judgment off of a single Instagram post and then run with it, right? Like, I was laughing. So if people go to my Instagram page at this point, I don't know, it's 12, 15 lines of pictures down. There's a picture that I had taken for myself. Okay. Like I'm single. I didn't take this for men. I took a boudoir photo shoot for myself as part of a healing process that my therapist wanted me to go through because I was a prostitute for so long. And so much of my sensuality and sexuality was always very performative. And so my therapist said, Ashley, I think that you need to do this as a way to reclaim sensuality just for yourself, like not in any sort of sick sexual way, but just in I'm beautiful, I feel good in my skin, and I'm going to celebrate that to sort of refocus and reclaim my body for myself and for God, so that next time, whenever I meet somebody and decide that I want to be with them, it's not something that I'm trying to run around and reclaim, right? So I had no intention of anyone seeing any of those pictures ever, okay? Ever. But then I had a conversation with a woman who had gone through some really toxic purity culture stuff, to the point where she just could not feel safe sexually with her husband because of some of the crazy stuff that the church had taught her. And it was breaking my heart because I started having these conversations with women over and over and over. And so I decided after prayer, key point, people, after prayer, and after talking to women who disciple me, I said, I'm going to post this one picture and I'm going to write up a post on how the church, essentially through shame and condemnation of women and their bodies, have robbed women of femininity, thus helping propel them to masculine space. And then now that they're operating in this masculine space, we wonder why marriages in Christian circles fail. It's because the church has compelled women to act as men in an attempt to protect men that they're not supposed to have to protect.
Whoa. Goodness, that's amazing.
So I posted the picture. Andy, there's nothing scandalous about that picture, okay? I live in Arizona. I have less clothes on a random Tuesday afternoon than I do in that picture. Like, just real talk. Everything that I have covered in any given day is completely covered. There's nothing scandalous about that picture other than it's beautiful. Like, other than that, if somebody could just snap the picture with the camera and it was just whatever, nobody would lose their minds. But what happened was I posted it. The caption very clearly states what I'm addressing on behalf of women, because I am a women's pastor. I am a women's advocate. I am a women's, all these things. And I had multiple, mind you, men. Let's hear that part, who were in my DMs like, you have fallen away from the Lord. Like, how dare you call yourself a pastor? Like, whenever you're out here, like, posting erotica on the internet. And it didn't affect me. I'm just like, bless them and block them. Like, bye. Because I knew that God was fine. I had prayed about it. I was not walking in disobedience. I was not trying to seduce anyone on the internet. So I share that story because that is so indicative of what so many Christians do. We will see one post. We will not take into consideration the totality of a person's life or the totality of a person's situation. We won't even read the caption. And we will go full on, judgment ninja from our keyboard.
Yep. Nuclear bomb.
And then now, instead of actually asking thought-provoking questions and genuinely walking through an opportunity that they have put forth for you to like really kind of get to know them better and to understand maybe the pain point that they're exhibiting on the internet, and processing with them through what it is that they're trying to say and what they're deeply wanting people to understand about them or their situation, we shame them, slam the door, and then everyone else that's reading the comments is like, who is this Yahoo? And we end up making it much more difficult for somebody else who could genuinely disciple this person online to step into that space now, because you have just blasted a person without the relationship. And so instead of it being accountability, which may have genuinely been your intent, it has now become judgment, and you have completely shut down the opportunity. And so we have to be very cognizant of that. Even in person, when we're discipling people, you could have somebody who walks into a Bible study and they're just like rude and grouchy and, nasty. And we don't take into consideration, we decide that that's who this person is by this one moment in time, instead of asking intelligent questions like, what's going on with you today? Like, how, what's up? Like, how was the commute? What are your kids doing? Justice, my 4-year-old, man, that guy, love him to pieces. He can take me from life is good to what in the world was I thinking having a 4-year-old in my 40s?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
real quick, and then everyone around me is like, she was so nice last time I saw her. What is happening? Well, my 4-year-old turned Hannibal Lecter on someone at school today and bit the tar out of them, So I think that we have to be, whenever it comes to discipleship, if the last thing I'll say on this is, one of the things that I think Jesus was just like freaking amazing at, obviously it's Jesus, but is that guy asked so many questions. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah.
Very rarely did Jesus just straight out of the gate be like, bah, 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 bah. He's like, what's happening here? Like, what are you afraid of? Why did you wake me up? You know what I mean? Like, what do you want? Like, he even asked the man that he did I think it was eyesight. He asked the blind man, what do you want? Like,
yeah,
it wasn't you want to be healed. It's what do you want? Because there is so much more power in well thought out questions than there ever is in quick judgment statements.
Yep.
And so from a hybrid perspective, like taking the time to ask these questions based on what you're seeing and in internet posts, and trying to genuinely understand their why, and then taking the time to intentionally pay attention to their content and get to know them that way, and then intentionally start having DM conversations with them, and then breaking down the this is mine ideology and actively connecting them with people in your network that are close to them that then can continue the discipleship process in person and get them plugged into a network of people that can come alongside of them and propel them closer to Christ is really what we should be doing. Yeah.
I think we're going to end on that. I'll end up wrapping it. So this is going to be off of the episode. At some point, I want us to talk about, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this before, but the notion that you need to have a curriculum to disciple people. Like, you need to have a book, you need to follow a Francis Chan book, or you need to, walk through 5 weeks or something. And I would love to get your take on that. And if you can do it in like 2 or 3 minutes, let's add it into the episode right now.
Okay.
If not, let me set the question up and let's see where we go with this, because I know you got a meeting and I actually have a meeting in 8 minutes as
Okay.
well. So let me. How am I going to set it? Okay, so we have traveled a long distance in kind of defining what a disciple is. We have looked at the physical side of it. We've looked at the digital side of it. You have so eloquently kind of hybridized it for us. The one pushback that me being in a physical church for such a long time and now delving into the digital world is that oftentimes when churches hire like a discipleship director or spiritual formation director or whatever, they then think that they need to follow some sort of curriculum. Like, okay, well, you need to like sit with 2 or 3 people and read a book or do this study or answer these questions and do that. And then you're going to be doing discipleship. So A, like, how do you do that in a digital space, or do you just chuck it out the window? And B, like, what are kind of the advantages and disadvantages to that?
Mm-hmm. I don't think there's anything wrong with going through books. Like there's a book called The Purple Book that I really, really like from a disciple perspective that really breaks down fundamental principles of the faith. I think that's an amazing book. So I don't think it's like, let's do away with all books. I think, though, that we have this misunderstanding that once the book is done, the discipleship is over. So, we've done 12 chapters of this book. High five. Goodbye. And that is not it. So I would say that if a person needs that, to get them started because maybe they're new at it, fine. But I would say that personally, I don't necessarily think that I don't think discipleship is not a class. Okay. Discipleship is a lifestyle.
That's important to hear too. Discipleship is not a class.
This is not, Jesus didn't sit the prophet or the disciples down and be like, we're going to go through the purple book today, fellas. Like, that's just not how it was. Discipleship is supposed to be people that you integrate into your life, that you allow to watch you live your life in pursuit of Christ. So I think it's more about knowing who your people are and knowing, like, this person used to have horrible money problems. Like, they just were bad at money. And through whatever methodology they use, now they're running extremely incredible businesses. They have good credit. They pay their bills on time. And now you have a new person that you've come in contact with, whether it's in church or online, and say, like, they're really struggling with finances. Well, I know that in my church, this person used to be really bad at money. And I also know that they love Jesus. And I am going to connect those two people and encourage that relationship to be formed so that that person can become so close to them that they're able to gain the knowledge and wisdom from somebody that's already gone through it. So it's not that I'm anti-books. I think books have their place for sure. But I think the missing piece is that we forget that discipleship is really relationship. And if you want to disciple someone well, it's more about making sure that you're matching people in spaces where you are walking alongside them and allowing them to actually see what you're doing with your life to become better. So, for instance, me discipling single moms. I can disciple single moms. I have a 20-year-old, a 17-year-old, 4-year-old. I've been a single mom for a long time. I know the hurdles and the things that single moms face. And I know the way that I have to allow Christ to minister to me in order to be able to minister properly to my children. So it would make sense for me to allow other single moms to get really close to me and to build that relationship with me so that whenever they're having a hard time, I'd be like, girl, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, this is what I've been through and this is how I did it. And this is what Christ says about it. And I'm going to shore you up and pray for you specifically because I can pray for you from a vantage point that Andy, who is not a single mom, can't pray for you from. And that's the shift, I think, is understanding that, yeah, we can use books as a pathway, but that's really more of a class. True discipleship is inviting people literally and digitally into your space so they can see the growth in you and you can encourage that kind of growth in them.